Have you noticed that most people are not terrified of the moment itself, but terrified of not knowing where they are going next? And have you noticed that what keeps you awake at night is often not fate, but the thought you keep gripping like a weapon? I must control. I must win. I must prove myself. Welcome back to the channel. Today, I want to take you into a story that looks ordinary on the surface, but carries a kind of truth that can walk with you for a long time. I want to show you why someone who truly sees reality can meet life and death with surprising steadiness. Not because they are cold, not because they do not love, but because their love is no longer tied into knots of grasping. And I want to show you how fear, the kind that creeps into your chest at midnight, can become the very fuel that wakes you up. Not in a dramatic, mystical way, but in the only way that matters. In the way you speak, the way you breathe, the way you hold a hand, the way you let go, and the way your destiny slowly changes because your causes change. Before we go into the deeper heart of this, I want you to hear one thing clearly. The goal is not to become a stone. The goal is not to pretend you have no feelings. Real cultivation does not erase feeling. Real cultivation illuminates feeling, softens grasping, and gives you a mind that can stay awake when the waves rise. Now come with me into a small city, into the life of a very ordinary man. I will call him Cheng. Cheng was not wealthy. He did not have a glamorous title. He worked in logistics, doing dispatch and coordination. His days were full of phones ringing, schedules breaking, drivers calling, customers complaining, managers pressuring, and paperwork stacking up like a second job. It was the kind of work that never looks heroic, yet keeps the whole machine of daily life moving. Cheng lived simply. His wishes were not complicated. He wanted his mother to be a little healthier. He wanted his home to have fewer arguments. He wanted his own days to be a little more stable. Those wishes sound humble, but life has a strange way of smashing humble wishes again and again. As if the sea keeps pushing the same small boat back from shore. Then a season came that changed his inner life. His mother was hospitalized. The doctor spoke politely, using careful words, but the eyes said what the mouth avoided. This was not a short illness. It was not a quick recovery story. In the corridor there was that smell that every hospital has. Disinfectant mixed with human fatigue and quiet fear. The ceiling lights made everyone look slightly pale. People walked softly even when they were in a hurry, as if the building itself demanded reverence. Cheng tried to stay brave. In front of his mother he said it would be fine. He made jokes. He asked her to eat a little. He adjusted the blanket like that small act could protect her from what he feared. But at night, when he finally returned home, he sat on the couch with the television on and heard nothing. His mind kept replaying one sentence over and over, like a stone rolling in a bowl. If the day comes, what will I do? Most people think fear comes from the word death itself. But if you listen closely to fear, you notice it is not only the end that frightens you. It is the unknown. It is the feeling of being pushed out of control. It is the clinging to what you cannot keep. You cling to a person, and you fear losing them. You cling to money, and you fear not having a path. You cling to status, and you fear being looked down on. You cling to control, and you fear collapse. So fear often returns to one root: attachment. Cheng was living inside that root. And then, as if life wanted to test him from both sides at once, trouble arrived at work. There was a colleague who did not like him. Cheng was serious, careful, and direct. He followed rules. The colleague was sloppy and loved to throw blame when things went wrong. One day, a mistake happened in a delivery chain. The colleague pointed at Cheng. In a meeting room full of eyes, he spoke loudly and framed Cheng as the problem. Cheng felt heat rise in his chest. Not just anger, but humiliation. The kind that makes your mind want to win, to prove, to strike back so the pain stops. This is one of the great traps of ordinary life. You feel attacked, and your mind believes fighting is the only way to regain dignity. And sometimes you can fight. Sometimes you should defend your rights. But there is a deeper question that determines whether defending becomes wisdom or becomes more suffering. The deeper question is this: are you defending truth, or are you feeding the ego that needs to win? Cheng had heard a teaching once, a simple line he never took seriously until that moment. When someone attacks you, the more you argue, the more you become trapped in appearances. The more trapped you become, the more they can pull your mind. If you do not take the bait, their anger eventually runs out. If you bite back, the knot tightens. Cheng used to think patience meant losing. That day, he looked at his mother's IV bottle in his mind and remembered how she had once said, "Do not argue with people. Life is long. You have to live it." Suddenly, the anger felt like holding a red-hot piece of metal. It felt powerful for 1 second, but it was burning his own hand. So he inhaled slowly, and he said nothing harsh. The meeting room became strangely quiet. The manager was waiting for an explosion. The colleague was waiting too, because he was used to Cheng fighting back. But Cheng lowered his eyes, opened his note, and calmly laid out the steps to fix what had happened. He explained the worst possible outcome honestly, the practical repairs needed, who should cover what, and how to communicate with the customer. He did not perform peace. He entered a different mode. A mode that said, "If I place my heart down first, the road will appear." The interesting thing about this is that it did not only change the outcome of the meeting, it changed how people saw him. The colleague could still throw words, but the group began to notice a pattern. Cheng did not chase credit, but when crises came, he could handle them. Cheng did not love to argue, but he was clear and dependable. Over time, the wind began to shift, but Cheng knew the real battlefield was not the office. It was his mind at night. Every evening he sat alone and rehearsed the future pain. He imagined funeral arrangements. He imagined relatives judging him. He imagined an empty room. He imagined regret. He imagined guilt. He imagined himself breaking. This is another human trap. The person has not left, but you suffer in advance until you are exhausted. Then when the moment arrives, you have no strength left. The mind is like a gambler, spending tomorrow before tomorrow exists. One late night in the hospital, the hallway lights looked like a long pale river. Patients slept. Machines made soft sounds. Cheng sat on a chair with his phone and scrolled without seeing. Then a short sentence appeared on the screen. The kind of sentence you can read in one breath, yet it can change your life if you let it in. It said that someone who truly understands reality sees taking up a body and setting down a body like putting on clothes and taking off clothes. It said that such a person meets it with ease, without terror. Cheng stared at that line for a long time. Putting on clothes and taking off clothes. How can that be? This is my mother. This is her life. This is everything. At first, the mind rejects this kind of teaching because it feels too light. It feels like it is minimizing love. But then the mind gets quieter, and another truth rises. The body you had as a child is not the body you have now. The cells change. The shape changes. The voice changes. The mind changes. Even the emotions that felt permanent 10 years ago are not the same emotions today. Life is a flow, not a block of stone. So what are you holding? You are holding a moment, and you are calling it forever. That night Cheng felt something shift. Not a full awakening. Not a movie scene where the sky opened, but a crack appeared in the hard wall of his attachment. He began to see that his fear was not only about death. His fear was about a self that did not want to let go. His fear was the voice that said, "I do not want to release my grip, because if I release, who am I?" The next day Cheng went to a temple, not to beg for miracles, not to buy luck. He went because he needed a place where he could sit without pretending. The temple was quiet, not crowded, not noisy. There were leaves falling in the courtyard. One by one, as if the earth was teaching impermanence in the most gentle language. Falling was not destruction. Falling was returning. Cheng sat outside and listened to a teacher speaking inside. The teacher did not speak in complicated philosophy. He spoke in plain cause and effect. Suffering arises from unwholesome actions and unwholesome minds. Happiness arises from wholesome actions and wholesome minds. And he said something that hit Cheng right in the chest. Real vows are not in ceremonies. Real vows are in how you live. If you only take vows in form but do not practice them in speech and action, it is empty. Cheng felt exposed, but not in a humiliating way, in a liberating way. He realized he had been treating practice like a costume, something you wear when life is dangerous. But his daily mind was still full of fighting, complaining, and controlling. He realized something else too. Cultivation is not becoming a stone. Cultivation is illuminating the mind, loosening attachment, and doing what is right in daily life while letting go of what cannot be held. That day Cheng began a practice so simple it almost sounds childish. He practiced 3 breaths. Whenever fear rose, he stopped, even if only for a few seconds, and took 1 slow breath. In that first breath, he silently admitted the truth. Fear is here. In the second breath, he remembered. Fear is not a command. It is a wave. In the third breath, he surrendered the wave to something higher than ego, to compassion and wisdom. This is not magic. This is training. When you train in small moments begin to change your fate. Cheng also began to practice patience, but not the kind of patience that swallows poison and pretends it tastes sweet. He practiced the patience that observes. When the colleague provoked him, Cheng watched his own mind first. Is this anger? Is this fear? Is this the desire to prove myself? He watched it like a person watching a play. And the moment you can watch a play, the play cannot swallow you as easily. He began to practice sincerity. Not only sincerity toward others, but sincerity toward his own heart. If he was afraid, he admitted it. If he was tired, he admitted it. If he was sad, he admitted it. He stopped trying to package himself as strong. And something strange happened. The moment he admitted weakness without self-hatred, real strength began to appear. Because real strength is not denial. Real strength is the ability to see what is true and still keep walking. Then one day his mother had a clear moment. She looked at him and said softly, "Do not be afraid. I will leave one day." Cheng felt his throat tighten. He wanted to pretend he was fine, but she held his hand and continued, "I can see you have changed. I hear you thanking the nurses. I hear you giving space to other families. I hear you speaking without arguing on the phone. That makes my heart calm. Remember this. Blessings are cultivated, not grabbed." That sentence landed like a bell. Blessings are cultivated, not grabbed. This is where a joyful mind begins. Not the kind of joy that depends on everything going your way, but the joy of accepting impermanence without doing harm. The joy of stopping the war with reality. When you stop fighting impermanence, your heart has room again. When your heart has room, compassion enters. When compassion enters, wisdom follows. Cheng kept returning to the clothes metaphor. He remembered being a child, crying while his mother changed his clothes. She did not panic. She did not treat it like tragedy. She soothed him, unchanged the shirt, and life continued. Cheng realized that as adults, we treat change as terror because we cling to the idea that the current form is the only form. But reality is change. So the question becomes, can you love without turning love into a cage? Can you care without grasping? Can you be present without demanding permanence? This is where fear turns into awakening. Now, the original theme says there are ways to turn fear into awakening. Cheng's story shows them, not as a list, but as living steps. The first way is to recognize what fear really is. Fear is often attachment wearing a mask. It is the mind gripping control. When you see that, you stop treating fear as an enemy outside. You treat it as a signal inside. A signal that says, you are clinging. You are trying to freeze what cannot be frozen. The second way is to train the body and breath. Fear lives in the body. It tightens the chest, speeds the mind, creates restless images. If you do not include the body in practice, the mind will keep being hijacked by nervous system waves. Cheng's 3 breaths were not poetic. They were medicine. They taught his body that he could survive a wave without becoming it. The third way is to transform conflict into training. Cheng used to believe patience meant losing. Then he discovered that the desire to win was often the desire to soothe wounded pride. He learned to act from clarity rather than from heat. This changed his karma at work, but more importantly, it changed the shape of his mind. A mind that no longer needs to win becomes freer, and freedom is the beginning of calm in the face of death. The fourth way is sincerity, the kind that stops lying to yourself. Many people suffer because they cannot admit what they feel, so they bury it, and it turns into bitterness. Cheng learned to name fear without shame. He learned to allow ears without drowning. That is emotional wisdom. When emotional wisdom grows, fear loses its secret power. The fifth way is ethical grounding on compassion in daily life. Cheng began practicing restraint and kindness in speech, in actions, in small choices. He avoided creating new harm. He cultivated gentleness. He practiced harmony with people around him. This matters because a conscience that feels clean is light. A light mind is not as terrified of leaving. A mind full of guilt clings harder. A mind full of grudges clings harder. A mind that has trained kindness has less inner weight. Cheng began to treat ethical training like a safety code for life. He stopped feeding cruelty. He stopped feeding dishonesty. He stopped feeding intoxication of anger and drama. He trained the mind to reduce greed, anger, and confusion, and to increase compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity, not as slogan, but as daily switches. Then something happened that surprised him. The colleague who used to provoke him came quietly one day and said, "My family has problem. I have been chaotic inside. I said harsh things to you. Please do not hold it." Cheng did not feel the pleasure of victory. He felt tenderness. He realized that behind a sharp person there is often a fear they cannot name. He nodded and said, "It is okay. If you need help, tell me." This is what a Bodhisattva heart looks like in ordinary life. Not wearing special clothes, not speaking grand words, just a mind that can contain others without being poisoned. Time moved forward, and his mother's condition entered the final stretch. Cheng became even steadier. He wiped her face slowly. He fed her water gently. He massaged her hands. He spoke softly. He did not rush. He did not treat the moment like a problem to fix. He treated it like a lamp that deserved tenderness as it dimmed. He spoke to his mother in a quiet way, not forcing beliefs, but offering comfort. If you want to rest, rest. If you see light, follow it. Do not be afraid. I dedicate whatever goodness I have to your peace. I offer my panic to compassion and wisdom. In the hospital, other families fought. They blamed doctors, blamed relatives, blamed fate. Cheng cried too, but his crying was not mixed with hatred. He cried with gratitude. Gratitude that his mother raised him. Gratitude that she endured hard years without abandoning him. Gratitude that impermanence, as painful as it was teaching him the hardest truth in the most direct way. Then, one early morning, her breathing became thin. Outside, it was still dark. Inside, machines made small sounds. Cheng held her hand. The clothes metaphor appeared again in his mind, not as philosophy, but as a living picture. He watched his mother's face, and what he saw shocked him. He did not see terror. He saw a kind of relief, like someone putting down a heavy bag after a long journey. Cheng did not explode into dramatic grief. Tears kept flowing, but his mind stayed clear. He understood. I am losing a form, but I am receiving an awakening. My mother is leaving her clothes, and my attachment is being loosened, not by force, but by reality itself. After she passed, relatives came. Old arguments appeared immediately. Who paid more? Who did more? Who was more filial? Death sometimes makes people count like accountants, because fear makes people cling to credit. Cheng did not join the counting. He did what needed to be done, spoke gratitude where it was needed, and avoided poisonous speech. He understood that real filial respect is not winning a debate. It is keeping the departing person's mind peaceful. He understood that real blessings are not loud. They are quiet causes that protect the heart. In the days after, Cheng did a simple reflection every night. He sat on the chair his mother used to sit on, closed his eyes, and looked at his mind. How much judging did I do today? How much clinging? How much fantasy? How much anger? How much desire to prove? Then he asked another question. Where did I soften? Where did I hold back harmful speech? Where did I choose kindness? Where did I remember impermanence? He was not counting other people's faults. He was counting his own mind. This is where cultivation becomes real. You do not need a special mountain. You do not need perfect silence. You need honesty. You need awareness. You need the willingness to look at the mind that creates your destiny. Later, Cheng said something that stayed with me. He said, I used to think seeing through reality means not caring. Now I know it means caring more deeply, but without sticking. I still love, but I do not chain love to control. I still grieve, but I do not turn grief into a war against impermanence. I learned not to be fearless because I never feel pain, but fearless because I know pain passes. I know everything arises and fades. I only need to cultivate this present thought well. This is the ease the title speaks about. The truth is not cold philosophy. The truth is impermanence. The truth is cause and effect. The truth is dependent arising. That everything appears because of conditions, and everything changes because conditions change. The truth is that clinging creates suffering, and letting go creates space. When you do not understand these truths, you fight reality and you get exhausted. When you understand them, you turn every event into practice, even pain, even loss. Now I want to speak to you directly, because some of you might be listening and feeling a knot tighten. You might think this means you must endure all harm. You might think this means you never defend yourself. That is not wisdom. Wisdom can set boundaries. Wisdom can use law and distance to protect what is wholesome. You can protect your rights without poisoning your heart with hatred. Hatred harms you first. It turns your mind into a prison. You can step away without cursing. You can say no without turning it into revenge. Real practice is not being passive. Real practice is being awake. Being awake means you can face the wave without becoming the wave. Now, let me share why this story creates resonance for so many people. Because most of us have lived some version of Cheng. Not the same job, not the same mother, but the same midnight fear, the same mental rehearsals, the same feeling that if we cannot control, we cannot breathe. And maybe you have noticed something about your own fear. It often appears when life is quiet, when the lights are off, when the distractions stop, when you are alone with the truth that change is coming, even if you do not know when. In those moments, many people reach for noise. They scroll, they snack, they drink, they start arguments, they run into business and anything to avoid sitting with the wave. But the path offers another way. It says, sit with the wave, breathe with the wave, look into the wave, ask what the wave is protecting. Often it is protecting a clinging self. When you see that, you can begin to loosen. And loosening is not losing love. Loosening is turning love into something cleaner. When love is clean, it becomes companionship instead of ownership. It becomes presence instead of grasping. It becomes blessing instead of suffering. I want to share a more personal reflection here, because many of you ask what this looks like in real modern life. When you are not in a hospital corridor, but you still feel the same fear in your chest. I have seen people face loss in very different ways. I have seen someone hold a grudge for years. Then when the person they hated passed away, the grudge turned into regret like a knife. They could not go back. They could not apologize. They could not undo time. And the pain they felt was not only grief, it was guilt. A guilt that came from knowing they had wasted precious moments feeding anger. That is what clinging does. It convinces you that you have time. Then time disappears, and the mind is left holding smoke. I have also seen someone who practiced a different way. They were not perfect. They still had a temper. They still had fear. But they trained one thing consistently. They trained repairing quickly. When they spoke sharply, they apologized sooner. When they misunderstood, they corrected sooner. When they felt pride, they softened sooner. They kept their conscience clean, not by being flawless, but by being sincere. When loss came, they cried, but their crying was not mixed with that knife of regret. They could say, I did my best to love cleanly. I did my best to not waste the time we had. And that gave them a kind of steadiness that looked almost like grace. This is why ethical cultivation matters. People think ethics is moral control. It is not. It is protection. It protects your future from the poison of regret. It protects your mind from the weight of guilt. It protects your relationships from unnecessary damage. And when death comes, whether it is the death of a person, the death of a relationship, the death of a job, or the death of a phase of your life, a protected mind is less terrified because it is less burdened. So when you hear the phrase, turning fear into awakening, do not treat it like poetry. Treat it like daily practice. The next time fear rises, try Cheng's simple method. Stop. Take one breath and admit fear is here. Take a second breath and remember fear is a wave, not a command. Take a third breath and hand the wave to compassion and wisdom. Meaning you choose the next action carefully. You choose speech that reduces harm. You choose a mind that does not feed hatred. Then do the next right thing. Not the next dramatic thing. The next right thing. Wash the dish. Send the apology. Make the phone call. Visit the person. Rest your body. Tell the truth. Hold your boundary. Offer help. Do one wholesome action. This is how destiny changes. Destiny changes when causes change. And causes change when small moments are lived differently. Now I want to end with a closing that lands in the heart. If you are afraid of death, you are not abnormal. If you are afraid of losing someone, you are not weak. Fear simply shows you where you cling. And where you cling is exactly where practice can begin. You do not practice to erase fear in one night. You practice to become someone who can hold fear without being controlled by it. You practice to become someone who loves without choking. You practice to become someone who faces impermanence without turning life into a constant war. This is what it means to see reality. Reality is that everything changes. Reality is that actions have consequences. Reality is that clinging creates suffering. Reality is that letting go creates space. Reality is that compassion makes the heart wide. Reality is that wisdom makes the mind clear. When your heart is wide and your mind is clear, death is still serious. But it is not a monster. It is a transition. Like taking off clothes at the end of a long day. Not because the day meant nothing, but because the day is complete. Now I want to invite you to share your own story in the comments. If you have faced a loss, what helped you stay steady? If you are facing fear right now, what is the fear really holding on to? Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear tonight. If you want more long-form talks like this, subscribe to the channel. Like the video so it reaches the person who is lying awake with fear and thinks they are alone. And if you want to support the channel so we can keep making deeper long teachings about awakening, wisdom, karma, compassion, cultivation, and destiny, consider becoming a member. Thank you for being here. Take the next breath. Choose the next wholesome action. Let fear become a teacher, not a ruler. And step by step, watch how your life becomes lighter and how your heart becomes steady enough to face change with calm.
Life gets noisy. Work, stress, expectations. Sometimes we lose touch with the quiet part of ourselves. Bracelet isn't just an accessory. It's a small reminder that you deserve peace. You deserve moments of stillness. You deserve to hold on to your inner balance. If one of these bracelets speaks to your heart, you'll find the purchase link in the description below. And even more auctions available on our channel's shop page. Pick home the one that feels right.